Well, Bayern Munich are 6 points ahead of Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga with 6 games to go. Winning the Bundesliga would mark the end of Harry Kane's personal trophy drought. This weekend, they face Borussia Dortmund in their Classico, which you can watch on ESPN and ESPN Plus in the United States on Saturday from 12 p.m. ET. We're joined from Germany by Archie Rhind-Tutt, who sat down with Harry Kane before a pivotal time in Bayern Munich's season. We'll hear from you and Harry shortly, Archie. But firstly, how was he as an interview?
I think he was as he always is, which is ultra professional. And sometimes you're wondering, okay, what am I having to try and interpret out of what he's saying here? Because he is always so on top of the message that he wants to get across. And yet I still think there were a few things that came out of it that were quite interesting. I'd say it's a little bit like your mobile phone contract. You've got to read the fine print and you go, oh, okay, that's what this means. Right. But no, as ever, a very personable fella, and happy enough to take the time, which not everybody is. It should be said, and particularly what I like is just how he's always stepping up to try and take responsibility, no matter what the scenario is. So yeah, I thought he came across as he always does, which is quite well.
Well, Archie says there's some interesting bits in this. We'll obviously be the judge of that. So let's hear what he had to say.
If you took a step back, how would you analyse your career so far?
Yeah, pretty good, to be honest. I've done a lot of things I've wanted to do in my career so far. Of course, I know the team trophy is the one that everyone will refer back to, but ultimately, you have to do your best in every situation, and I feel like I've done that. From when I set out, it was always about how consistent I could be. I looked at the greats of the game and what made them great, and it wasn't just doing it in spells, it was doing it year after year, and that was a big drive of mine, to be able to consistently be one of the best players in the world. And that drive will be with me until the end of my career. Whether I finish with 1 trophy or 20 trophies, ultimately it won't change my mindset in what I want to achieve and how I try and achieve it. Like I said, we have another opportunity this year to win some trophies, and that would be incredible, and maybe that would stop that noise around me a little bit. But I think in football in general, you're always going to have people who doubt you, people who criticise you. The most important thing is that you know what you're trying to achieve. Your teammates respect you for how you work, and the club respects you, and the fans respect you, and that's ultimately who I care about.
When it comes to the adventure that you've been on here, is there any part of you that thinks one day I'd still like to go back home?
I'm not sure. I've said throughout my whole career, I'm not someone who likes to think too far ahead. I'm extremely happy here. I think we have a fantastic team, fantastic coaching staff. And I just feel like, whilst I feel like I'm in the best condition, I want to play at the highest level possible. And this is as high as it gets. So I know a lot can change in football in a short space of time, and things can happen. But ultimately, my focus is here. I'm not thinking about any other league or any other team. And with football, I'd like to just go with the flow. And at the moment, the flow is here at Bayern Munich.
So we can put to bed any of those stories that I've seen of something in the summer.
A few random stories out there for sure, yeah. So I don't know where they come from, but for sure I'm happy here at Bayern Munich.
Just dealing with the criticism that comes your way. From the outside, to me, it feels unfair in that it feels like whatever you haven't done seems to get levelled at you more than what you have done. How do you deal with that on a personal level? Because I guess on one point, no one will be more critical of yourself than you. How is that?
Yeah, so that's kind of the summary, really. I know when I've played good, I know when I've played bad, I know when I'm helping the team in ways, even when I'm not scoring, etc. I know, there's a lot of people out there who, talk about football and commentate on football, or, do stuff on football who don't really understand football that much. So, I know there's been games where I've scored and not played great, and I've been spoke about in this high light. And there's been games where I haven't scored and been one of the best players on the pitch, and this spoke about how you weren't that good. So it's like it comes with it. Ultimately, I know the things I need to improve on. I know when I've done well and not. Having people who critique you is part of the game, is part of life. It's how you let it affect you, which is the difference. And ultimately, I said earlier, it motivates me to be even better. And look, when it's all said and done, when I look back on my career, I just want to make sure I've done everything possible to be the best I can be. And ultimately, the opinions of a lot of people just don't matter.
And you spoke about not getting too high, not getting too low. Is it a relief to kind of get away from that mentality that we have in England, where it seems to be build them up, then knock them down?
Yeah, I don't think it's just in England, though. I think it's everywhere. Me, for example, this season, I went a few games without scoring, and there's a big crisis talk. I scored a couple against Leverkusen, and there's Ballon d'Or talk. So it's like it's the high and the low is too far. And I think it's important for young players to understand that, not to get carried away with it, because it's literally game by game. People can judge your whole season in a different way. So that's kind of where football is, just because of all the platforms and all the talk about it. And to be honest, it's probably only going to get more and more as we go. So, but that's where you need to have the right people around you to know what's important. The right coaches to say, no, you need to work on this and work on that, and not get carried away. You can use the good moments as confidence builders, and when people are talking well about you, it's nice to use that as confidence, but then don't let that get carried away into being complacent. And then when people ain't talking great about you, you can use that as fuel and motivation, and as long as it don't then become self-doubt, etc., then there's always a balance to it. And that's just the part of life that you have to try and figure out.
Wait, so I shouldn't push Harry Kane for Ballon d'Or then?
You can carry on.
Okay,
I mean, I've scored a few goals since, and the conversations have carried on. But again, with all those conversations, ultimately that's going to come down to who wins the biggest trophies at the end of the season. So a lot of it's kind of irrelevant until we kind of get to May and then the Club World Cup. So, but no, you can keep talking about it. I have no issue with that, but I'm just kind of setting it as an example.
Archie, there's a lot of people who talk about football or who comment on football or do stuff with football who don't really understand football that much. Now, aside from using the word football 4 times in the same sentence, what do you make of that from Harry Kane? Do you think that's a little bit of an admission that maybe some of the criticism that he's had, and I'm thinking, I suppose I'm going back to maybe the Euros when he kind of had that almost in every game when he was playing for England, but maybe also that if he's had some of that in Germany, that he is aware of it and that it is maybe getting to him a little bit.
So I had an interview with him before this where in the space of one answer, he went from saying that, he was aware of the noise around him to then in the next answer being like, but I don't listen to what they're saying. And I think this tells you something, which is that he is always trying to shut out that noise, but that's an admission that it does always get through to him in some way. And I understand why, because he is one of the greatest English players of all time. And does he get that respect back home? Probably not. And yet in Germany, there's not this same consistent talk about, well, where's your trophy, mate? Which seems to surround him in England, and as if he needs it to legitimize his status. So I can understand why it gets under his skin when few players have achieved the goal tally that he has in his career at both club and international level. And he's also at international level gone closer to lifting a major trophy than many others before him. So, yeah, I understand where he's coming from, but I find it interesting that it does actually get through to him, because I think that you could hear it with the tone that he deals with things there. He deals with things on such a steady tone, and yet, obviously, behind the scenes, it does affect him on some level.
Archie, do you not think he's overthinking it a bit? Because I have to say, I don't think there's any disrespect for Harry Kane in this country. And I think the fact that he hasn't won a trophy, yes, that is used as I won't say a stick to beat him with, because that's probably too far. But there were chances for him to leave Tottenham, and he stuck around. He probably made a mistake by signing such a long contract when he did. That kind of denied him the opportunity to leave. But obviously, when Man City came in 2-3 years ago, he would have gone there had he been able to. But Tottenham held out. I get the sense with Harry Kane sometimes that it's almost like trying to convince himself that he's had a good career. We know he's had a great career, but he will win a trophy in Germany this season. But I do think that he's making more of it than anybody else is, because, if he wins the Bundesliga, he will have solved that problem. But then I still reckon there'll be something deep down thinking, I want to win the Premier League. I want to win the Champions League. So one might not be enough. He's too good a player, too great a player not to win anything. But, it's like the Alan Shearer situation, isn't it? He went to Newcastle, never won the trophy after winning the league with Blackburn. So some players do that. But I do think that there's not really conversations going on about Harry Kane not being a great player. He's England's all-time leading scorer by a million miles. So on that basis, how important is it, do you think, to him and in reality that he wins a trophy with Bayern this season?
I think very important. He just wants to shut out that noise, which is probably more online than anything, and yet is still making its way through to him. That I think is the thing he knows that he can do. But also, when I was summing up the way that I thought it must come across to him, he was prepared to sign on to that statement and say, yeah, this is how it is and how he is most critical of himself. And I think that also because he's probably watched it, how players who are infinitely less talented and proven than him have picked up winners' medals, and he thinks, well, when's my day going to come? He's been in the infinite bridesmaids role through his career. I mean, what a bridesmaid! But at the same time, I think that it's difficult for him to compute that how can I be this good, and also how selfless he is to the team in terms of the work that he puts in. I look at the Bayern team that he's playing in right now, and it's not like he's just hanging around in the box and nodding them in. That he is putting in all the work. One scene comes to mind in the Champions League against Leverkusen, where he's helping back and putting in sliding tackles and putting his body on the line. Very important player for them defensively at corners in terms of his aerial prowess as well. And yeah, I think as a player, you're also going to be looking at, okay, well, what haven't I done? When you are, again, on the talented plane that he is, I think it's just quite a normal and human way to respond, in all honesty.
I thought it's quite telling in that interview that where he starts talking about maybe some of the kind of the commentary around his performances, that he talks specifically about games where he thinks he's done quite well but hasn't scored, and then other games where he has scored and hasn't done quite as well. And it's becoming a bit of a common theme that among some of the players. There was an interview that we did with Jack Grealish, so this time last year, where he said the same thing, that you can be almost anonymous in a game and have 2 tap-ins at a back post, and all of a sudden people are talking about you in this kind of man of the match performances. And in other games where you've been really involved, you've kind of made the team tick, you've played really well, you're kind of happy with your own performance, but you haven't played that final pass to get the assist, or maybe not got that shot off to get the goal, and all of a sudden people are talking about your numbers. Just in regard to that, how is Harry Kane kind of been viewed in Germany? Because he went to Bayern for an awful lot of money. It would have been very, very easy for him to have kind of failed. But what is it, 44 goals last season, 34 this season? I mean, he's done everything that he was meant to do, right? Just from a personal point of view.
Yeah, and if you chip in the assists on top of that, then it's under €1 million per goal involvement, and that was the talk in Germany at the time when he arrived. It was, okay, this is a lot of money, though. Is he going to be worth it? And I don't think anybody in Germany would now say no. Even though he is yet to touch silverware, there is. He has garnered the respect of everyone here, and is a very feared striker, as you would expect.
How does he compare to Lewandowski, Archie? In terms of, obviously, Lewandowski won a lot more in Germany than Harry's won yet, and it was over a longer period of time. But in the short space of time he's been there, he's probably matched Lewandowski in terms of goals per game, or even outstripped him.
he hasn't got the big record that Lewandowski broke in a season of Gerd Müller, which was 41. But I think in terms of the Bayern dynamics of it, Lewandowski was dragging his heels towards the end of his time there about not getting the respect that he thinks he deserved. And I think at Bayern as well, in that dressing room, he had a tendency to drag the mood down a little bit. And Harry Kane is not that. He is somebody who is coming in, doing his job, and has a different has a different focus to him. Robert Lewandowski was a stunning player for Bayern Munich and gave a lot to the club. But I think just part of Robert Lewandowski's thinking was, am I being truly appreciated here for actually what I've done at this club? And I think that started to rankle with him and ended up in the move to Barcelona. He wanted a move to Real Madrid before that, quite famously. But yeah, Harry Kane is having to face the same questions that Robert Lewandowski had to about, is he contributing enough in big games? And the thing is that Harry Kane's been able to come back actually and say, look, I've scored in all these games. And the thing is as well at Bayern, sometimes before what looks like a big game, there'll be this talk of, okay, well, can he do it? And then Bayern will win so comfortably in that game that it gets written off as it's like, that doesn't count though. Which is a bit unfair. Whereas if it's a big game, say for a smaller club, then it remains a big game. Whereas at Bayern, the terms of the agreement then change depending on how comfortably you win. And I think that's something that Harry Kane has found out. Overall, I think that, he's on a similar level to Lewandowski. Without the end to this season, I don't think it's possible to make a final judgment. And we know there's going to be another season after that. I would then wonder if Harry Kane says, Germany, mission accomplished, because he will, by that stage, be entering his mid-30s. And as James knows, there are ambitions outside of football as well that he might still be looking at. And as you've mentioned, in the Premier League, does he still have a look at Alan Shearer's record? And having enough time in between, having been in the Premier League, I think as well, would create a certain acceptance of him going elsewhere. It's just a question of where could he possibly go?
Well, let's come on to that. I mean, just before we do, just one point I wanted to add in was that just on the criticism. I mean, I've interviewed Harry one-on-one a few times. I've spoken to him a lot, covering England down the years and the Spurs, and I understand the sort of build them up, knock them down mentality, but he's always been an exception to that in that he has quite openly said, I judge myself against Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi. That's where I want to be. If you look at the Amazon documentary, the Tottenham All or Nothing, he's in a meeting with Jose Mourinho, literally saying, I want to be judged on that level. I want to be in that conversation with those players. So I do think, and as admirable as that is, and I do think Kane gets a lot of unfair criticism, if you're going to put yourself on that pedestal yourself, you are kind of inviting, I think, a little bit more criticism than maybe you would do otherwise. But in terms of his next move, I mean, you're right, he has aspirations to be a kicker in the NFL. When he's spoken about that previously, he's talked about if he ever does do it, he doesn't want to do it sort of as a real afterthought, when he's in his 40s and he's, sort of physically in decline. That would sort of suggest that maybe a few years before that, maybe towards his late 30s. I mean, what is he, 32 this summer? Just before we get into moving back to England, Archie, do you get any sense at all that Bayern are starting to succession plan? And the name I think of is Benjamin Sesko, specifically with that. Or is there anyone else? Do you think Sesko's a serious option for Bayern? Or do you think there's anyone else that they are starting to look at of that kind of age group to think, life beyond Kane?
There's been talk of there needs to be a true backup to Kane in the squad. That's started to come through more this season. And Šeško is a name that has been mentioned, albeit I look at him at RB Leipzig now and there is still some development to be done with him. There are still some steps forward that he needs to make. As much as he is a striker of fine potential and can do some outrageous things, he's not ready yet. I'm just thinking of other options right now in the Bundesliga. There was talk about Jonathan Burkhardt, who's had an excellent season with Mainz, who is also in his early 20s and is starting to prove himself. I think it's a little bit too early again for him as well, but there is no one-to-one in terms of replacement out there on the reputation level. I think Bayern will, like, the biggest signing that they want to make next is Florian Wirtz. That is the worst kept secret in German football, and that is also the question now with Thomas Müller retiring, and that taking over all the headlines in Germany. I think that's where eyes will move to next. But yeah, I think it is certainly in the back of Bayern's minds right now, but somewhere on the agenda that Harry Kane will need replacing. His contract is up in 2027, which is not too long, and you would think that Bayern would still want to, if they can, and because of Harry Kane's quality and what he promises in terms of goals, he will still demand a fee. So next summer, 1 year left on the deal, that it looks like would be the most likely time, I think.
Just before we get to what it goes next, I just want to kind of go back on what you said about Messi and Ronaldo and how Harry Kane measures himself against those two. I think a word that Archie used maybe 10 minutes ago when he said that Harry Kane is a selfless player. I think that is to his credit, but it's also maybe to his downfall in the sense that Cristiano Ronaldo is the most ruthless player I've ever known, and Messi is also on the pitch ruthless as well. And I think had Harry Kane really wanted to match those two, he'd have left Tottenham 5 years ago. I think he'd have shown more ruthlessness, and that it can be too much of a nice guy at times. And we see it when he speaks. He's a perfect ambassador for Bayern, for England. But I think if he wanted to be measured alongside Ronaldo and Messi, he should have left Tottenham. He might have won more trophies by now. You know, had he gone to Man City the year before they signed Haaland, I mean, we're talking about a sliding doors moment here, aren't we? But had Kane gone to City before Haaland, would they have needed Haaland? I think Harry Kane would have scored as many goals for Man City as Erling Haaland, and he could have won a treble. He's a better player than Erling Haaland. He's a better striker than Erling Haaland. But by not pushing through the move, he didn't show that ruthlessness that has made Messi and Ronaldo the great players they are. Anyway, back to the talk of next season or the year after that. When he does return to the Premier League, if he does, where's the best option for him?
Well, we need to just state that there is a release clause in his contract at Bayern, which becomes active in January. It's about 65 million euros. I've had that confirmed to me by sources close to the player. My instinct says that Liverpool would be a fit for him. And I don't know, I don't base that on any information. I don't know if Liverpool would have any interest in him. But I think there's going to be some sort of striker merry-go-round this summer. You know, with a lot of talk about Isak, Gyökeres, a number of players, Osimhen maybe. There's a lot of players, Sesko, another one. All of these forwards who could move, and there's a domino effect in place. I think if one of them goes, then two or three will probably follow. And for me, I just think Kane would be, you know, it would be much easier for Kane, for the Tottenham sort of element to swallow it. I think if he went to Liverpool, he'd slot straight into that team, proven, no issues at all, obviously, about adapting to the Premier League and understanding what the demands would be. An absolute player who straight away would solve their number 9 problem. And
are you thinking this summer, though, next summer? What's your timescale on that?
Look, I mean, from what Archie's interview, from what he said in that interview, it sounds like he's not going to go anywhere this summer. But I do wonder if Liverpool put the money on the table. You know, and the thing about a release clause, okay, it's not active until January, but what it does is effectively set the market price, because you know in sort of 4 or 5 months' time he's going to be worth this. So it then becomes a lot easier to negotiate. Well, what is he worth now? Because there's a fixed point in the future where you know what his price is going to be. So, you know, if we say, let's speculate, if we said 80 million euros.
Well, Bill did report this summer, didn't it? Bill reported that, although you're right about the clause next January, there's an 80 million euro clause this summer. So according to Bill, we don't know if that's right. I'm not sure if you guys have got any steer on that, but if it is 80 million, that's around 65 million pounds. I take your point about Liverpool, but they've got a situation with Mo Salah right now, same sort of age, and they're haggling over a contract. the Liverpool, do any club these days go for players in their 30s? That's the problem against these great players. So many clubs now are obsessed with signing players who are 22, 23, 24 that, it's going to take a club to kind of break their model to sign a Harry Kane, even though you think he'd be guaranteed goals.
And that's it. And it's something that's happened with PSR that clubs, I think clubs are far more reluctant now to invest big money in players who are over the age of 30. You think about what United did with Van Persie, kind of that last piece of the puzzle to win them a Premier League title. I just think that clubs at the moment are far more reluctant to kind of invest in that type of player, compared to the way they were maybe sort of 10 years ago. And you're right, Oggy, that clubs seem more desperate to invest in younger players who they may get sort of 6, 7, 8 years out of, because they know in terms of PSR that if it works out, then they're kind of in the clear. Whereas, do you genuinely think of a Premier League team who would invest 65 million euros in Harry Kane, as good as he is, but at that age, knowing that you're probably not going to get anything back for him?
I mean, Man United would have done that deal.
They would, yeah. And they should have, in fairness to him. They should have when they signed Højlund. They should have pushed the boat out. But now he's 2 years down the line.
3 years ago. It's 2 years difference, isn't it? And if Mo Salah was to leave Liverpool this year at the same age as Harry Kane and they replaced him with Harry Kane, that wouldn't go down very well at Anfield, believe me. The fans would be pretty mad at that, because Mo Salah's, an amazing player. So, and you could say that Salah's not had the injuries that Harry Kane's had. So I just don't see him at Liverpool on that basis. That goals-wise, yes, but in terms of age profile, wages, doesn't fit with the clubs these days. The days, like Rob says, I really can't think of any club. PSG are out of the market as well for these older players. They're going a different route. So many clubs. I mean, you're looking at Real Madrid, but they don't need a Harry Kane. So he may have to see his contract out at Bayern Munich. And what will he be then, 34?
Yeah, I can't see... I mean, Manchester United are looking elsewhere. You can't see him going to Arsenal. Obviously City aren't going to sign another forward like that. So I mean, the only other one I suppose is Chelsea. And I think it was interesting that when he circulated that he wanted to go a couple of years before he left to go to Bayern, he was privately, I was told he was open to going to Chelsea, even though it would have been a very acrimonious move. Tottenham and Chelsea, big London rivals. Look, I mean, Todd Bowley back then was kind of calling the shots a lot more than he is now, and he was trying to push Thomas Tuchel, and he was manager to sign Ronaldo. So, although they have this, model of signing players on long contracts at a younger age, I do wonder whether maybe Chelsea could be an option for him. But again, PSR concerns, the fact that Bowley's not really calling the shots as much as he was there. Clear Lake have kind of taken over the sort of more day-to-day running of the club, sort of suggests that maybe Chelsea are not even an option for him. But I don't know. If it's just something
James,
always natural Liverpool thing.
You put it out there. I was surprised you even mentioned Arsenal, even considered it. And I wouldn't have thought that is ever a goer. But Sol Campbell made the move. Arsenal need a striker. Harry Kane wants to win the Premier League. I mean, how the percentage-wise from 1 to 100, what we're talking about Harry Kane to Arsenal?
Well, I mean, they need a centre forward, Arsenal. They're in the market for one. He was a boyhood fan. I mean, I'm sat, just for those who were watching this on YouTube, I'm not being held by police. I am actually sat in the London Colney Arsenal training ground interpreter's room. That's actually where I am at the moment. So I don't know whether maybe I'm influenced by being here, thinking it might have more legs than it should do. If you want to put a number on it, I'd say 10%, but I feel that's generous.
10%, okay. 1 in 10.
No chance.
We'll go with that. 1 in 10.
Chance.
No, I agree. But, over our time doing this job, we've seen lots of strange transfers. Sol Campbell to Arsenal, Carlos Tevez to Manchester City, Luis Figo to Real Madrid. I think with that, we're talking that level, aren't we? If Harry Kane was even considering going to Arsenal, it's in that league. And I agree. I don't think it's possible. But, strange things happen. Arsenal is a striker. He wants to win the Premier League. Tottenham, well, we'll see.
You've got that mischievous grin on your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very mischievous, isn't it? I don't think it'll happen.
The man's literally told you, Archie, that he doesn't want to go anywhere and he's very happy at Bayern. So perhaps we should probably respect that. I mean, do you think there's any chance that, from a kind of financial point of view, if a club, let's say whether that release clause exists or not, if someone came with 80 million for Harry Kane this summer, do you think Bayern would seriously consider selling it?
I think the thought would go through their head. and I think that they would ultimately relent, because what makes me think that they would think about it has been the amount of chatter in Munich this season about, well, we need to be saving money, and this has been the whole thing with Thomas Muller, a player who is an icon and definitely in the top 5 Bayern players of all time, that he's leaving at the end of the season. And they've said it's not a financial thing, it's a sporting thing. But I think it plays a role when Thomas Muller is earning up to a reported 20 million euros a year still. And the thing is, well, you think Harry Kane is on 25, reportedly, alongside Jamal Musiala. And if Bayern are wanting to plan for the future and get somebody else in, then Harry Kane's wage will be one that they would look to get off. But the thing is that he's so valuable to this team right now and to the way that they play, that I don't know whether Bayern would be ready to part with him unless Florian Wirtz was at the club. And I don't know if enough dominoes would fall in between that happening. So I still think it's very unlikely, and the way that Harry Kane has put it as well is that it's not something that he's actively chasing either right now.